So we are recording. Okay. Welcome everyone to this women's chat. I'm super excited. My name is Amanda Hildebrand. I'm the membership manager. And essentially how today is going to go, I will go around and do a little round table, ask everyone to introduce themselves. And then after introductions, we can take questions directly from the audience, or if everyone's being a little shy, I can go ahead and ask some questions that our hosts previously provided, just to maybe, get everyone's, minds working on things that they do want to ask. So why don't we go ahead with Linda? Why don't we start with you first and just give us a little introduction?
Great. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, you're a little quiet, but I think it'll be okay.
Hello? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I am hearing.
Okay. I'm a data systems engineer at Northrop Grumman's division.
Okay, why don't we go with Melissa or Mel?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I generally go by Mel, but either one works. Mel Bravin. I am an associate technical fellow at Boeing Commercial Airplanes, and my specialty is inclement weather as it relates to engine operation.
Nice.
Perfect. All right, next up is Lisa.
Hello, my name is Lisa Mchugh, and I work for Northrop Grumman Aeronautical Systems Company, and work in materials and process engineering. I started out my career as a structures analysis engineer and got into materials and process applications for aerospace structures.
All right, great, thank you. And then Kimberly.
Yes, ma'am. So I am Kimberly. I'm an engineer with Caterpillar, and I do the on-machine validation. So kind of like a flight engineer, if you will, for the aircraft world. And I work on everything pre-production, and I've been doing that a little over 10 years now.
Wonderful. And just calling out one last time for Lori, in case I'm just not seeing you or you're maybe hidden somehow, just making sure. Lori? All right, well, maybe Lori will join us in a little bit. Okay, so why don't we just go ahead and kick things off? Does anyone have any initial questions that they want to throw out there from the audience? Okay, this is normal. Most people don't have questions right out of the gate, so I will go ahead.
Actually, Sindhu had a hand raised.
Oh.
Yeah.
Why am I not seeing hand raising? Huh.
I just saw it pop up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm Sindhu. I'm a mechanical design engineer, over 8 years of experience. I have a question that how do we get enter into from automotive industry into the aerospace industry?
Can you repeat the question? Is the question how do you go from the automotive industry into the aerospace industry? Is that the question? Okay.
Yes. Because in order to take up, we need to go under the many of the courses regarding the aerospace from the automotive if we want to jump into it. But how do we that it is like with the experience of automotive, how do we go ahead and take an opportunity to work on automotive, like on aerospace?
Yeah, I actually just had a chat with a high-level manager at Raytheon, and we covered this subject because my background is aerospace, but I work for Caterpillar doing basically systems validation on giant earth moving equipment. So not quite automotive, but I mean, a large mining truck is pretty similar to just an F-150. And in talking to her, engineering across the board is engineering. If you know the skill set to do validation or documentation or
Mm.
your bench testing or the system validation,
Mm.
it's still a process. The process is the same. It's simply the product that's different. And in talking to the Raytheon manager and hearing about my background, her response was, Kim, we would snack you up in a heartbeat if you wanted to come over to the aerospace industry. So that kind of taught me that it doesn't matter if I work on a giant earth moving machine. It's simply that I have the engineering skill set that does transfer, and they can teach you the aerospace specific side of things. They can teach you, the process for how they do documentation and those little nuances, but you have the skill set to switch over. So that would be my feedback from that discussion.
Yeah.
And
I think I can add to that. Those are some great points. This is Linda.
Please.
Yeah. So a lot of times you'll look for job vacancies, and the job vacancies are very specific about what you have to have experience in. And it's been my experience to just connect the dots. Tell them what you do have experience in and how it is relevant to what they're asking. And a lot of times you have algorithms that look for buzzwords. So if you just keep repeating what they're asking about and connecting it to what you know, then you can get that call back because you're actually connecting those dots for them. Because I know a lot of it's intimidated with working done to how it is like airports.
Okay, so to piggyback off of what Linda just said, one difference between men and women when it comes to applying for a job, if we have a job application, it says, okay, requirements, here are these 10 requirements, here are these nice to haves. Men assume that if they meet 60% of the requirements, they will apply for the job and they will learn the rest on the job. Women take this and they look at, okay, I have to have these 10 things. I can't even apply for this job because I don't have 5 years of airfoil experience, for example. And so they don't apply. So, I mean, the worst they can do is say no. If you meet 60% of the requirements, remember your male counterparts are going to be applying for that job. And I fully support what Linda was just saying, and I love that she went that direction. And yeah, I would just add, if you meet 60% of the requirements, apply for it because your male counterparts are doing the same thing.
Yeah, I think
100% agree with you there.
That's yeah.
Thank you for the information.
I guess I would add something slightly different, although I completely agree with what Kimberly and Linda are both saying. I think that's absolutely accurate. But I'd also add that I spent a lot of time working not only with my structures counterparts, but my manufacturing counterparts. And what I see is that we're always looking for affordable ways of building things. We're looking a lot at automation. And of course, one of the most convenient places to look at what are the great things that are being done in automation, a lot of them are coming from the automotive industry. Granted, the volume that we make in aircraft isn't necessarily the kind of volumes that you're building in automotive production, but it's still very pertinent, and we're looking very frequently at what kinds of automation can be leveraged from the automotive industry and elsewhere. So any experience you may have with automation is also going to be a very good interest to folks in the aerospace industry.
Okay.
Tag team on what Lisa just said.
Yeah.
Diversity matters. So I the more diversity you have on a team, the better that project's going to be, the better that team's going to be, because you get male perspective, female perspective, you get automotive background, you get systems background, so on and so forth. To give you an example, we have a software team at my company, and I'm the one doing the on-machine validation. And so essentially I'm like, hey, there's a bug, go fix it. There's a bug, go fix it, so on and so forth. Because I have the on-machine experience and nobody on their team does, they wanted me to come join their team and work for them, because I have that different perspective, because I have that different experience, that diversity. And I could tell them, hey, look, what you're developing is cool, but tweak it in this way, because this is how the customer is going to use the machine. Here's how the operator uses the machine. That's what I brought to the table. They can teach me the software side of things. So with your automotive background, you're going to be an asset to the team because of that diversity, because of that different perspective. So, great question.
So are there
Yeah.
any other, I actually have a question that I just wanted to sort of jump off of that. When you talk about diversity of thought, I think that's so interesting when it comes to SAE in particular, because we have so many different industries that are converging. There's the aerospace, automotive, and commercial vehicles. So is that something that you all have found to be a unique benefit of being involved in SAE, is because there is this, cross-pollination of ideas across industries?
Absolutely.
I would say it
I have a
is.
story I'd like to tell.
Yeah.
I love stories.
I
Please share.
have a quick story. Well, see, and when I was at when I was with a really long time, I was in their issue. Okay, I can't, right? Well, I really should go to the show. Way to get there, because it was a government industry meeting, and government and people go for free. I convinced my mom that I should go to a meeting, government industry meeting, and I should go batteries for the automotive section about lithium batteries. And I was one of the few people with my colleagues of lithium batteries. One of the and showed that we needed to go in that direction at the FAA because of that. And
Oh, you cut out.
Yeah, I mean, so valid. We were able to start connecting that and being able and your company or agency or very valuable, and that did mean so. Requirement for the transfer. Very valuable for the very valuable.
Fantastic.
You did cut out a little bit, so I don't know what if there's like something going on with your computer, but you cut out for a bit, but we heard most of it, and that's fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that SAE can do that for you. And it just occurred to me when the question was asked about sort of going from the aero industry to the auto industry or vice versa. Any other thoughts on that, or are there any other questions?
I got two paths I want to go. One is professional, one's personal. On one of my original teams, we all worked on different products, but we were all doing similar jobs. So if you think about systems validation, okay, just across 10 separate products, and all 10 of us engineers got together once a week or every other week to discuss, here's what I'm doing, here are the challenges I'm facing. Even though everybody was working on separate products, which is kind of the same as aerospace industry, mechanical industry, automotive industry, so on and so forth, we all face similar problems, and I can come to the table and say, hey, look, here's a challenge I have. Somebody else could say, oh, we faced that challenge a few years ago. Here's what you do. Same thing with the different industries. Technology will be applied maybe in a slightly different manner, but still that experience is going to be relevant. And if I switch over to the personal for just a moment, I have what I call an advisory cabinet where I've got about 20 individuals that I go to for advice and wisdom to speak into, professional area, faith area, and the personal area. And depending on what topic I need advice on, I'll go to different people for that subject because they've been there, done that. And again, same thing kind of with SAE, where other people have been there, done that. So if you can use that and leverage that, by all means, go for it.
To do another little plug when you mentioned that advisory, what did you call it? An advisory?
My advisory cabinet.
Okay. And you did
Yes.
that on your own, as
Yes.
just, that's fantastic. And
Thank you.
the little plug I want to make is that we do have a mentor program as part of your SAE member benefit. So, I can put the link in the chat box, but I just wanted to let everyone know if you don't have something like that, and maybe you don't even know where to start, you can enroll in this online program and you enter in certain criteria, maybe what you're looking for in a mentor, and the system will serve you up some matches that would be good for you. So yeah, I mean, we've had a mentor program for a couple of years now, but we just switched over to a new platform, and this one is so much more intuitive. So I'm really excited, to have this platform for everyone. So I will
Nice.
put that link, in the chat box. And I would encourage, Kimberly, Lisa, Linda, everyone on the phone, Mel, if you guys want to enroll as a mentor, you can decide how much time you want to spend. It walks you through the whole thing. It's a really, really great platform. So
Oh,
I've
absolutely.
been looking for
so I
external
will grab
mentors
that and put that in there.
to be a mentor. So that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely,
And
absolutely.
if you're at a large company, try to seek out their mentor programs. Learn from their seasoned individuals from
If I
different
can,
divisions.
yes.
And I can
Yeah,
speak if
that's
there are
actually
any,
an excellent idea.
if there are any fellow Boeing folks on the phone, our systems have become convoluted over time. So I would encourage you to reach out directly to people, either if you can't find them in your company directory. LinkedIn is also a fantastic resource, SAE, any other connections you can find, or sometimes just a cold call is what it takes of someone who has your interest,
To add to that, so for any new engineers on the line or anyone within the first 5 years, when I first joined the company, I knew I wanted that mentorship. I didn't know how important it would be, but what I did, I found 15 women within my company from all different stages, like 5 years in, less than 15 years, less than 25 years. I talked to engineers, I talked to a VP, admin assistant, and basically everybody in between. This whole gamut of people, and I sat down with them individually for about an hour or more to get some of their advice, their perspective. If you do something like that, or if you do a cold call, or just reach out to individuals, some of them will just give you advice. Some of them will offer to be a mentor. If you get that, recognize it for the amazing blessing that it is and take advantage of that. Because I had one of those opportunities and I did not recognize it for the opportunity that it was. And I regretted it years later. But yeah, reach out to people in your company for sure. And anytime you find someone who has their life together, either in a professional sense or personal sense, then grab a hold of them, put them in your advisory cabinet, and take advantage of those connections.
So, that actually makes me think too, and this was a question, Kimberly, that you actually had related to confidence.
Yes, ma'am.
What was your exact question? What steps have you taken to have confidence in the workplace? And I think that relates so much to what we just said about applying for jobs,
Yep.
asking people to be your mentor. I mean, that's scary, right? To reach out and just say, will you help me? Will you mentor me? So can we talk a little bit about what you ladies have done to, create more confidence in yourself?
Ooh, I love this question. I speak to this all the time when I do some outreach with high school girls and middle school girls. Um, so for me, several things. Oh, and a little bit of background here. My apologies if it's not concise. I was incredibly shy growing up, and so reaching out to anyone in my early 20s, not probably the easiest thing to do. But I I did several things to kind of help with this. One was sports for me, and in 5th grade I told my 6'2", 220-pound dad I would beat him in basketball before he was 40, which is a pretty gutsy thing to do for someone who is not even 5'6" yet and not even 100 pounds. But just having that internal dialogue of, we played hundreds of games of basketball, I lost hundreds of games of basketball, but I believed I would beat him. He has a killer jump shot. Any day of the week, I knew if I was objective that he would beat me, but I had the confidence that I was going to go out there and kick his butt. And it was just kind of that internal record of, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, which laid the foundation for me to have confidence later in life. The other component, public speaking growing up for me was challenging, to say the least. Like, I was a girl, hands shaking, couldn't get 2 words out really, and just hated it. And practice. I took a presentation class when I joined Caterpillar to gain the experience, to gain the confidence. And then I do a lot of public speaking now. And if that means I practice 40 times over the presentation in order to go to Germany and do a worldwide conference and present, I'm going to practice 40 times. And I've had a two-star general come up to me and ask me if I was a professional speaker. But that is the growth from scared crapless doing a presentation in school to gutsy and confident. Like, I'm engaging in presentation, I'm walking around. Another thing for confidence, posture matters. So some people would say, fake it till you make it. And if you get an opportunity, take it. You can learn how to do it later on. I won't speak too much into that, but this is what some people have advised me on. But when it comes to posture, studies have shown that your posture helps affect your confidence. So when I do a presentation, I'm standing up straight, I'm looking people in the eye, shoulders back, confident posture. And I would say that does help. Like right now, I'm sitting down, so I'm just kind of casual. But those are some of the things I've done to help gain confidence in public speaking and just in the workplace. Also, just experience. If you get an opportunity to, okay, again, if you're presented with the opportunity, hey, go do this, go work with these people for a little bit, you have the option of saying, no, I can't, or I will figure it out. If you go the option of I will figure it out, one, the internal voice is saying with a positive manner, yes, I can do this. You're not hearing the negativity. And 2, you'll gain the experience and be able to apply that later on. And again, that advisory cabinet, having those people who have been there, done that, definitely help with confidence because they know the outcome. So I'll let Please, someone
Oh
else.
yeah. Well, I just wanted to expand on what you said, and I think having activities outside of work where you practice confidence and interpersonal skills. Like I'm a musician, so for me, since I was little, being up on stage and having everyone and accepting the criticism that comes with that. If you do competitions, if you do things like that, because you have to be ready to accept not just lauding your well done effort, but if someone does have a legitimate some legitimate feedback for you. And same as you, I had a training manager for an airline come up and say, "Oh, well, you really had their attention." When I was training a bunch of pilots on some information a couple years ago, but it's really speaks to that. Not if you fail, what's the worst that happens? Maybe you look silly for a couple of minutes, and honestly, people forget about that really quickly. And then everyone moves on. It's kind of like everyone's concerned with their own pimple, so they're not going to see your pimple. It's just that kind of, I think we carry those teenage insecurities with us as we grow up. And so I think it's getting out of your head and just, if you really want to catastrophize it, the worst thing that could happen is you're going to be fired, and you're not going to be fired. So that's the attitude I take about things. Most everything can be fixed or ameliorated or discussed and improved upon if you feel like you did in fact fail that one time.
And talking that over with others. So I had a situation, it was during COVID. I was asked to present at a conference, and I had a certain standard for myself about how it was going to go down. I did not meet my own standard, and this greatly upsetted me. But one of my coworkers and a good friend of mine was part of the conference. She had heard all of my answers, and she helped me see kind of like what you were saying, Mel, about getting outside your own head. I was able to see a different perspective, and it became a learning opportunity of I'd never been part of a Zoom conference before, and I learned, because of my communication style, everybody's video feed being turned off and getting questions and not being able to have that engagement of looking at people and focusing on them while they're talking. If your video feed is off, I now have to close my eyes so that I can focus on the words and not having that visual audio disconnect. And that was a challenge for me during that conference. And yeah, just talking to somebody else about it and having their feedback. It's like, okay, Cam, this is not nearly as bad as what you thought it was. So learn from it, move on. So
yeah, that's exactly
Mel
right.
mentioned
Because
something. Good.
Oh, I was just going to add that normally, if you let yourself get inside your own head too much, sometimes it can actually make you stumble on what it was you're presenting, even if it's something you know really well. If there's some distraction or something that makes you feel like, okay, I'm not getting this across, what can I do better? You actually could cause yourself to stumble over what you're trying to relay, which might make things worse. So it's really important to just, focus on what you're presenting and, the fact that you are providing information to the audience and not get too caught up in, was it just right or was it the way I wanted it to be? Because the information transfer is the key part of it, and don't get too caught up in if you did it exactly right.
Wise words.
Clarissa,
you have a question?
To add one point. Yeah, this is Linda. I just wanted to add to that one more point. Mel mentioned that she was conducting training. You learn very quickly how very really how much you can find an opportunity to do a workshop or a training class. That really adds to your confidence.
Bingo.
Yep, 100%.
Oh yeah.
Because once you realize that you have to explain this to someone, that's where the challenge comes in.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And
Not only that, but
especially, oh, go ahead.
no, you please go.
Especially with training people that have different backgrounds, right? Someone who may not have a STEM background, and getting them to understand a technical concept and apply it is often even more challenging when you can't use the technical words that we all use every day.
Oh my gosh, I loved it that you went there. Okay, can I talk a little bit about this one? So so going back to the training others, one, you learn it so much deeper when you are teaching others. I think Einstein once said something about like you don't know it well enough if you can't teach someone else about it. Paraphrasing, of course. But then you learn so much when you're teaching somebody else, and communication is one of them, because if you have a software engineer talking to a mechanical engineer, software engineers talk in terms of little tiny pieces. This software variable does this software variable does that, and then this system is going to do this. Mechanical engineers, and here in Illinois at Caterpillar, we've got a lot of Midwestern farm boys who can wrench on anything and fix it, but they speak in terms of the entire system. What I've learned, especially in the past 2 weeks, is to learn somebody else's natural language and to speak in their natural language. And if I can take a moment to just kind of explain this, natural language is a term that I'm coining with several components. One being native language, so English, German, French, Spanish. Is the person rather direct or indirect? Do they need questions or do they announce? And the announcers, you can tell, they enter the room, they would tell you everything about their day. They don't need to be asked. This really comes into play when you've got a new engineer on the team. And if I know this new engineer is somebody who needs questions, I'm going to be intentional about going to them once a week and saying, hey, look, what challenges are you facing? What can I help you with? If I know they're an announcer, well, then I can wait for them to come to me because I know they're going to. Other components would be sensitive, and that goes in so many different directions and different levels of sensitivity, as well as, you know, their natural love language. So if you can speak to someone in their natural language, if it's a software engineer, speak to them in software terms. If it's a mechanical engineer, speak to them in mechanical terms. If I'm talking aerospace and I'm, you know, working for Caterpillar, I'm going to try to relate in aerospace terms, talk about airplanes instead of talk about tractors and bulldozers. Because on a high level, if you can speak their natural language, you are allowing them to speak English. You might be speaking French, German, or Spanish, but yet they're speaking English, which is so much easier for them. Is this making sense to everyone? Like, can I get a
Oh,
thumbs up or
100%.
something?
I mean, I'm
Okay.
multilingual, but also when I bring it in, I'm like, listen, it's like your catalytic converter, you know, or listen, you know, this is like when we're baking, you know, I choose your aphorism, choose your manner of getting the information across, but being able to present it in so many different things, you know, if I can tell you that, you know, throwing down concrete is like icing a cake, you know, we get
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
stuff like that.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important. Being able to relate what you're sharing or describing,
Yep.
so that it is understandable in terms that the receiver is familiar with, or at least can
Bingo.
comprehend.
Bingo.
Clarissa, did you have your hand raised earlier? Oh, yes.
I did. Hi, this is my first SAE event, and I've really enjoyed listening to all you ladies share your stories. My name's Clarissa Miller. I didn't put my last name in the participant chat. I work over at Momentive. I'm a program manager for our RTV silicones area for aerospace and aviation. And so, you know, one of the things that I've seen over the last few years is many of us were thrown into being in a lab setting or a production setting from the technical side to suddenly we're either in a remote or hybrid work situation. And I was just wondering how your roles or your work habits may or may not have changed during COVID regarding trying to navigate in a remote or hybrid work situation, or even going back to work full time now.
I'll take that one, at least initially. At the time that COVID came on, I had just been starting a development program that had a lot of lab time and developing an application process for a coating. So it made it really difficult to get that developed. And we were working with an outside supplier who felt like we weren't doing enough. You know, they were in another state, but, you know, with the limited amount of time in the lab and most things being done remotely or a lot of email traffic, made it really challenging to get the process developed, but also to ensure that there was accurate and clear communication, not only with the people that were working for me in the lab, but also with the supplier that was very anxious for us to do the work and show that their product was, you know, worthwhile as far as the process being developed. So it made for some really challenging situations, and it made me understand how important clear and concise communication is, but also making sure that, you know, the two-way communication is happening, you know, that my lab people were telling me clearly what they were having problems with, and that I was giving them, you know, quick turnaround on suggestions. I'm sorry, was there a question? Anyway, the long story short, it was just, you know, communication strategies became much more important. Because there was less real-time interaction. So, you know, there's definitely a challenge there. You know, myself working in a hybrid situation, you know, sometimes in the office, sometimes not.
I would add a little bit to that from a previous experience, not so much with COVID, but I was in Arizona while the rest of my team was in Illinois. And this is kind of similar to COVID because you have that disconnect where you can't just get together with them in person. Communication styles, absolutely super important, as well as I really learned that being able to turn around and just have a side conversation with my boss or with my team lead, that's pretty important. And so we did have to modify the communication a little bit and use more video platforms like this here. For some people, it's really beneficial to have the cameras turned on. You get that connection with the person. You get to read their body language. Having audio only can be a little challenging in some situations, or even just grabbing a pencil and paper and drawing something out. With us working remotely, you can't really just grab a piece of paper, turn around to the person next to you and say, hey, here, let me scribble on this paper this concept I'm trying to teach you. So finding ways of doing that on the computer and sharing your screen, things like that, were also really helpful for me in that situation where I was, remote in that situation. And just my 2 cents.
Clarissa, did that
If
answer
we
your
don't have
question?
anything
Do you
else
have
on that
any
question,
follow-up
Oh,
questions to that?
thanks for your ideas.
can I throw out a question to the group?
Absolutely.
So I was, so ladies, what has been your biggest failure and what have you learned from it? Okay, so I guess I'll go first since that might, I don't know, I'm kind of getting crickets at the moment. One of my goals for the session is to really help out the new engineers, the folks, 5 years in or less. And I was thinking about what questions I would want to know or want to ask if I was just starting out. And that would definitely be one of them. What advice would you want to know when you're first starting out in your career would be another one. And I don't want to lay out any dirty laundry or anything like that, but so I'm not asking people to go that direction. But I would say for me, communication, like those soft people skills, and at a high level, there's a situation where somebody had a misunderstanding and that individual did not know me personally, but was upset with me or just upset over, again, this perceived misunderstanding. Well, I didn't realize that one of the lessons learned, if somebody brings emotion to the table, one cannot bring logic to the table until those emotions are dealt with, because emotions always trump logic. And this person just wanted to send a written form of communication, like an email or a text. And because I'd never met this person, I suggested, hey, look, let's do this over the phone or in person so that there's no misunderstanding. And the individual did not want to go there because doing something in person is a lot more intimidating than through email or text, because then you have to face the other person's emotions, you have to face their reaction, and especially if you don't know them, this is fairly intimidating. Like look at any 20-year-old, a 10-year-old, they would rather text than do something in person, face to face, like same situation. So this individual said, no, I don't want to get together in person. No, I don't want to do this over the phone. And I allowed it. Well, that led to future issues and future miscommunications. And again, because I did not know the person, I brought logic to the table, engineer. The other individual brought emotion to the table, and that situation does not work. So until I was able to be empathetic and compassionate and just validate her feelings, that is huge. I had to validate her feelings and address the perceived wrong, whether or not there was a wrong that occurred or not, that doesn't matter. I had to address that first before logic can be brought to the table. So that would be kind of my biggest failure, if that makes sense to people.
I actually am impressed with your ability to be self-reflective like that, though, which I think is huge when it comes to communication, because you didn't even have to recognize that you needed to validate that person's feelings. You could have just kept, I hear a lot of people in the workplace say, that's just how I am, or that's just how I communicate.
Yeah.
So I'm impressed with your ability to self-reflect in that moment. So I think that's also a win, not just a failure.
Thank you. I totally agree. It was definitely a win, and I mentored several college interns, and I covered this, and I wanted to bring this up in here. So a coworker of mine sent me the book Strengths Finder from Gallup by Don Clifton. I can send the link in here.
Yeah, we just took a class on my fellowship just had a 2-week
Yeah.
class starting with that thing. So good.
Yep.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and so I learned my 5 strengths and weaknesses, or the 5 strengths anyway. And it was things that I've done, and one of those reflecting is part of that. But to just hear somebody else point this out was really beneficial. So if you haven't done that, I would highly recommend it. It helped me go from this level to this level in the past few weeks. So I can share that later on. But yeah, Mel, I hope it was beneficial for you as well.
Oh, it was fantastic. Like I resisted because it was a fuzzy class, but like once you get
Sure.
over the right brain trying
Yeah.
to not control things, it was very helpful.
Yes.
And I wanted to add to what you had said. I think as women, often stereotypically, we may find ourselves trying to read between the lines and intent of or the subtext of what people are saying. And in my experience, other women tend to read into that and men do not. Men
So
are
true.
yeah, so it's a lot more straightforward dealing with men. And instead of that introspection of what did they mean, who are what are they really
Yep.
trying to say. And if you and it like I this is something I practice. Okay, what is the face value of what they are saying, and assume no negative intent coming from that person. I find that things often go a lot more smoothly, because oftentimes when you face challenges from others, it is often because it is their feelings about the subject. They feel less than, they feel challenged, they feel in a negative light, and they're projecting that on you. So it's important to remember that often attacks or other negative communication with people is not a personal reflection on your performance or your capabilities. It is it is often a projection of the other party involved. And so to be able to not take that personally and communicate with the issue, and as you said, with empathy for that person and validation of their feelings, and then hopefully being able to move forward. And again, yes, it is important to nip those things in the bud with a voice or face-to-face conversation when possible, just to hash it out. I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do as well. One of the things that I found as a pitfall for that type of communication is when you are unable to, meet them where they're at, so to speak, and they are, for whatever reason, convinced that you are somehow trying to undermine them. If you're not able to get them to understand where you're coming from, if they're not willing to communicate with you so you can better understand where they're coming from, it will continue to be a problem that can fester. And unfortunately, what I've seen happen is for women that can result in, vague um, vague issues being raised, such that you're portrayed in this light that is somehow not a team player because this person sees you as at odds with what they want or what they are attempting to do. So it's really important to try and find a way to get through, to connect, and to try and resolve it. And sometimes that means involving other people who can maybe mediate. Because I know a failure of what I see as a failure of mine. I didn't do that early enough, and it ended up, resulting in that type of situation. And, if I had really insisted more strongly that, my leadership team get more directly involved, it might have helped resolve the situation without as much angst from
Sure.
the other side.
Really good point.
I wanted to share not necessarily a failure, but a lesson learned. I
Please.
think that I went to work in the federal government too early in my career. And I guess it depends on what agency you are a part of. Government is very difficult, and it's across. And if you're interested in going into management or to enter the government at a much more general service role, like you're 14, if you get into the government too early, moving up is almost impossible. So it's like a zigzag path where you almost have to bounce around between departments or agencies. So my advice would be get a lot of industry experience so that if you are interested in going into the federal government, think about that as an end, not a beginning.
Good point.
Well, we have 4 minutes left. Is there anyone else that had a question or anyone else on the panel that wanted to throw something out there? Lori, I see that you joined us, so welcome, Lori. And not to put you on the spot, but yeah, did you have anything that you wanted to throw out as just some thoughts or feedback on the communication aspect of things we've been talking about? Lori, can you hear me? Okay. Well, we'll just move on. Lori, if something changes and you're able to.
Sorry, I hit double muted.
Oh, you were double
muted.
muted.
My phone was on mute. Sorry about that. I saw I was
No
open,
worries,
but not
no
on my
worries.
phone. Okay. Yeah, I'd like to just throw out one comment in regards to the discussion we just had. I thought those were excellent points. One of the things I do to take a look at when you do have these emotions is I always go back to where is this in the project or the milestones, trying to get people to look at artifacts. How does this work with the specifications? How does this work with the requirements? Can you show me on your timeline or where in this spec that we can make this change, and try to focus on those artifacts instead of just that emotional side too. So I have the different teams I work with, which are several on the space side of the house, and it can be very challenging. Just like you had mentioned, working government contracts it can be very frustrating because of all of the logistics that have to happen. But we always try to focus on those artifacts that have to be prepared, that have to be reviewed, and getting people to come back and take a look and base their case or their challenge on what meets the criteria set and how it fits into the project profile. So trying to diffuse the emotional side by getting those people to take a look at, so show me how that fits in here. Share with me why your idea is better than another through the data you've collected and the requirement that has to be met. So that's something that I found that's been successful.
It sounds like you're taking the emotion off the table so that you can be logical and have a discussion. Is that a correct summary?
Yes, and sometimes that works and doesn't work, but for the most part, because as you know, and as a senior engineer, I've been in the engineering community in Boeing for several years. It's mostly men. We have more women, but and you're absolutely right as far as trying to get the translation ring is always trying to figure out, well, what does he really mean? Or is he trying to do this or that? But pretty much, if you keep it on that keel, have them focus on what the project is, those requirements, it takes that emotional side out. And you'd be surprised, there really isn't that much. Even though you might think someone might be backstabbing you or undermining you, if you keep focused on the data, on the project, and why that needs to move forward, that it's very helpful as far as trying to lead that discussion forward.
Yep.
Yeah, Lori, I've had similar experience, and I think that's excellent advice for those who are find themselves in those situations, is to focus on, you know, what's the data, what's the artifacts or supporting evidence, and that way it kind of tries to keep the conversation and the discussion on the topic of importance, and not diverge into, you know, an us versus them kind of conversation.
Absolutely. Take the comments at face value, but anytime you can get emotion off the table and replace it with logic and facts, I mean, you can't argue with data. You can argue with opinions and, oh, well, he's doing this because of this reason and blah, 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 but you cannot argue with facts and data. So if you focus on the project, yeah, I totally agree with that. This has been a great discussion.
This has been
I wish
really
we were
great.
going a little bit longer.
Yeah, no, this has been fantastic. And we are at time, but the good news is that we will post this recorded video in the online chat, so people that couldn't make it can view this video, and then maybe some other questions will come out in the online discussion. So this can definitely be continued there. So I thank you so much, everyone, for participating, for our hosts. I'm not an aerospace engineer. I'm not an engineer at all. But this has helped me, just being a woman, you know, in the workplace. So I appreciate all of the advice I've heard today too. So thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing the conversation online too.
Fantastic.
All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.